Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Content Creators Unite, the show where we discuss all things content creation. So if you want to learn how to grow your business using your blog, using a newsletter, using an ebook, or even a physical book, you are in the right place. And I'm your host, John Clements, and I'm excited to introduce my guest for today. Her name is Michele DeFilippo, and she has more than 50 years of experience in book publishing. And her company, 1106 Design, makes it easy for authors to release a top quality book, keep control of it, and earn more money each time they sell a copy. Michele is on a mission to help authors ask the right questions, avoid scams, and make informed decisions when they search for publishing and service providers. So, Michele, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me on. I hope I can be useful to your listeners.
I think you will be. I'm excited about our discussion today. So as we get started, if you would just mind sharing just a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into doing what it is you do.
Well, I wish I could tell you I had a plan, but 52 years ago, I got out of school and I was going on job interviews. And the first company that offered me a job was Crown Publishing in New York City. And so I accepted, and that's how I wound up in the publishing industry. And I loved it from day one and have been working in various aspects of publishing over the last 50 years. And now we serve independent authors and help them produce quality books.
That is amazing. And, I think plans are kind of overrated sometimes. I think we often fall into those things and it ends up being way better than maybe what our plan might have been. So that's amazing. So what is it about your service? So what you do is you help independent authors publish their book and you help them, basically keep more of their hard-earned money while they're at it. So what makes you excited about that? If you could tell everyone listening, what's the coolest thing about this business? What would your answer be?
Well, the coolest thing is the same thing I discovered in my first week at Crown Publishing, or for my first year at Crown Publishing, let's say, and that is that every job is different. So there's no boredom in helping independent authors, whether they're creating a small book or a long one, a big masterwork. Every job is different. Every author is different. So it's never a case of getting in a rut or being bored with the process or with the person you're working for. It's every day is a new day.
Nice. So I'm going to ask you one follow-up question. You don't know this one's coming, so I apologize. But it made me think of a question. So to what extent do you kind of guide authors toward following a style guide, whether it's, Chicago manual style or some internal thing? And then how much do you allow them to kind of have their own voice peek through?
Well, that's a great question. The Chicago Manual of Style is the Bible in book publishing. And I know that's different if you're writing content for other publications like AP style or AMA style, or APA style it is. So different authors have different preferences depending on their content. But generally, Chicago is the style guide for book publishing. And what I tell my authors is that they don't have to agree with everything in Chicago style. It's not that rigid, but they should be consistent. So one example might be that Chicago likes to omit the periods in the abbreviation for the United States. Instead of U period, S period, they say we should use US. I find that a little annoying and strange. It stops me when I'm reading, and nothing should stop people when they're reading. And so I tell my authors, if you want to put the periods in, that's fine. Just be consistent in your manuscript.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm an editor as well. I work kind of in the business world primarily. And you're absolutely right. Consistency is so key. If you're going to quote unquote violate a rule, just make sure you do it all the time and it's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Exactly. A lot of times we'll have authors who come to us from an editor like yourself, and between the author and the editor, they'll make exceptions to that style guide, and they'll send us their own style guide, and we just follow it because, like you said, consistency is the main issue.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good tip that we actually use in the business world as well, is if I'm working for a client and they don't have an internal style guide, I just create one for them. Mm-hmm. So any listeners out there who are creating content, if you always want to make sure you're consistent, that is a simple way to do it. Just open a new Google document and start recording all the idiosyncrasies you have, and boom, there's your style guide. So
That's
very
right.
useful tool. So I looked at your website. It's very well done, by the way. Love it.
Thank you.
You have got a blog that I know you run. I'm guessing I know you have a social media presence, at least on LinkedIn, and you may have newsletters or other materials. So could you just walk us through, like, what does your content creation workflow look like to do your own marketing for your own business?
Well, we try to be everywhere that our authors might be, and that's kind of a challenge because an author can be everywhere. It's tough to segment the market and say, okay, most authors are found here or there or someplace else, but anybody and everybody is writing books today. So we just try to be everywhere. I have a newsletter on Substack. I have a blog. We do the social media. And basically just try to be responsive whenever someone reaches out to us with a question.
Yeah. Do you have like a content calendar or anything like that, or is it more of just a kind of an organic approach?
Oh, it's organic. That's a great
Nice.
word. It's like, how busy am I this week? Do we have time for a blog? I know it should be more structured than that, but it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Well, although you have a number of blogs, and your most recent blog is from like 3 days ago as of the time of this recording. So I know you're doing a great job with that organic approach. So how about that kind of drifts into the next question I had, which is, how do you handle challenges when it comes to creating content? So you said, like, for example, well, I'm so busy this week, I don't know if I can have time for a blog or not. So like, how do you kind of navigate those challenges?
Well, I do have somebody on my team that does this for me, right? So, and it's so much easier now to find opportunities for creating content. We have Google. I'm, as you can see, old enough to remember work before the internet, so it was a lot harder to find topics and even research topics, 20, 30 years ago. Now you can just kind of plug any search term into Google and think about whether or not there's a link to what you're doing and how can you exploit that link. So it's cool.
That is cool. Yeah. And I'm old enough to remember before Google too. So we're all good.
Well, very young.
Yeah. How old am I? I don't know. I'm old enough to where I had to think about it. How about that?
Yeah. Okay.
So how did you find this person who does your content for you? Do they work with you, or is it like a contractor?
Just a contractor, and she's really smart. She also helps us with project management. So she was referred to me by one of my editors.
Nice. And so I actually like that you bring that up, because so often, as like, especially like a solopreneur, you're doing everything yourself, and sometimes you have to. But if you have the bandwidth and the budget to be able to outsource some of that stuff, it's just like, I'm sure it just takes so much off of your plate to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, well, there's always something to do when you own a business, and it's not really a matter of affording contract help. It's a matter of what is that contractor going to do for you for the price. And if it's something you can't get to yourself on a regular basis, or something that you just don't have the skills to do, and they're better at it than you are, it's not really an expense. It's a necessity. It's not a frivolous expense, I should say.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, identifying your gaps and weaknesses and saying, how can I get someone to do this, and they'll do a better job than I will do. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I'll get that time back that I can do the things I'm really good at. So okay. I love that perspective.
Yeah, that's really the biggest challenge, I think, for most small business owners, is what should you focus on? And you can keep your fingers in the pie and try to do everything, but you're not going to be effective. And that's true of design. It's true of writing. It's true of, in our case, ebook formatting or cover design. You cannot possibly be good at everything, no matter how smart you are. So get help. Get somebody who is an expert and has studied up on it.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. So let's talk about, so you said let's drill in on Substack, because that's interesting to me. And it makes sense because I'm sure a lot of writers hang out on Substack. So that's like a great place to be. So let's say you publish a newsletter on Substack. What are you looking at to determine if that particular newsletter was successful or not?
Well, Substack's great in that regard. You get a report once a week or every 2 weeks or so, and they tell you how many people opened your newsletter and whether or not you got any subscriptions as a result of that open. So that's a little bit of feedback that's always useful. We're actually going to change up our format on Substack. We've up until now, for the last couple of years, we've had multiple topics and multiple links to our social media. We're going to try a long form method from now on and just give people one topic and a lengthier article to see if that gets us better engagement, because we're always looking for more engagement.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So then what is your focus now? Is it as far as like, are you selling? Is it more informational? And then what is that long form content going to look like?
Well, for me, it's informational. There's been so many changes in book publishing and not necessarily in a direction that's beneficial to authors. So I feel now, and the reason I'm doing these podcasts is because I want to let authors know that what they're most likely to find on Google in a search when they go looking for help is probably the wrong answer, and that original self-publishing still exists. And what the original model for self-publishing was that the author is the publisher, and the author makes the investment to create the product, and the author gets all of the revenue when a book is sold. Well, what's happening now is, quote unquote, publishers have kind of crept into the middle ground, and they're actually taking money out of the author's pocket every time a book is sold, even though they charge the author for their services up front. So authors are really leaving quite a bit of money on the table. And my aim now is to educate them and reintroduce original self-publishing.
Yeah, actually, that's super interesting to me, because when you said, you're getting paid, you're getting charged up front, and then the publisher takes a cut of every copy, I immediately thought of two other companies that do that: credit card companies and insurance companies.
Exactly.
And if I ran a business, I would not want to be associated with either of those if I could absolutely help it. So
yeah,
I think that's quite the selling point.
Well, traditional publishing, the publisher used to and still does make all of the investment to produce the book, and then the author is paid a small royalty. That's fair because the author hasn't made any investment, right? The publisher is a business, and they need to recoup the investment that they made. But with these middleman companies that I just mentioned, they're charging the author to produce the book, and they're paying the author a small royalty. And in many cases, the author is making less money on the book than the publishing company.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like that risk is balanced,
Yeah.
And so what you guys are doing is, there's still the upfront cost because, it is a service and there is value that needs to be paid for. But then after that, then the author retains all the rights, all the money, all the everything.
Exactly. What we do, we help them create the book, but then we upload the files to the author's print-on-demand accounts so that they get all the sales reports, they get the bank deposits, and they get every penny of revenue that is possible to make in the book world directly to them. And we're out of the financial picture at that point. We're always available for help if the author needs it, but we don't participate in the finances after the book is created.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. That's a great service. It looks like you found a kind of a hole or a niche in the market, and like, hey, we can fill that. We can provide value, and we can do it better than these other companies that maybe don't have as good of business practices as we have. I love that.
Well, like I said, that's original self-publishing, which has been forgotten.
Yeah. So we kind of talked through Substack a little bit, and it sounds like you're trying to provide that information and teach people that there's a better way to do things, which is amazing. So you use Substack, you use a blog. Do you use any other tools to get the word out, or do you do any kind of scheduling, or is it still more just kind of like an organic approach?
Well, we're on social media, and we'll share content from other people in the industry that we admire or we think would be useful to authors. We'll just sit down once a month and figure out what are we going to do, and we'll pre-schedule it so that it happens, whenever we think it's going to get a good reaction. It's casual. I've never really planned anything in my life, actually.
Well, you've gotten this far, so.
Somehow managed to get this far.
Yeah, it sounds like to me like you do have some structure in place. Like you're not completely freewheeling it. That is not your approach at all.
No.
But I think you're just saying, I want to err more on the side of flexibility than rigidness. And I think that's totally fine. And I think that I would guess that, that complements you and your personality and your work style well. So I really appreciate that you've, been able to understand that about yourself, and like, hey, there's more than one way to do this. Like, you don't have to do it a certain way.
Well, personally, I get annoyed at too many messages. With inboxes are overflowing now with automated announcements of every kind. I don't ever want to be a pest. And that's even true if someone contacts us for our services. We're not going to start sending you 3 emails a day and hit you over the head with our message. We're just going to have a nice conversation with you. I think automation is fine and AI is fine, but I hope we never forget the human touch, because it's still people talking to people.
Yeah, I like what you said there, the human touch. Because to me, and we could go off the AI tangent, but we won't. But just needless to say, AI is a great tool for some things, but yeah, as soon as people thought, oh, I can use it to just make all of my content for me, they've immediately forgotten that human touch, which I think ultimately is what makes it effective anyway. So sure, use it to help, but this whole cloth content creation business, I don't think it will. I hope it won't last.
Well, I think it's probably like everything else. The pendulum swings in one direction too far, and then we come back to common sense. I hope that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, me too. So one thing that I wanted to mention is, or just bring up as well, as far as your approach. So for instance, you have a blog, which people can search via Google or their search engine of choice. I would assume that Substack also allows people to search from Google. So are you attempting to go out and get any of that organic reach and like use SEO principles and that things, or are you more using those as just maybe like lead nurturing tools?
Well, we try to include keywords in the blog, because before we can reach a human being, we have to reach a machine, Google, for Google to actually put the link up for anyone to find. So, but I try still to put out well-written material. I did talk to an SEO expert at one point who showed me AI written blog posts, and I read through them, and they were absolutely painful. I said, you don't understand. I can't put out content like this because my customers are writers.
Right.
They'll immediately just hit the delete button if I put out something written this badly. Well, it wasn't that it was written badly. It was just so repetitious because he was trying to pack the blog post with keywords. And I said, no, I can't do this. And maybe we're paying a price for that. I don't know. But again, I don't want to give up that human touch.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, so I'm going to disagree with you slightly. I don't think you're paying a price, because I looked at some of your blog posts. So first of all, keyword stuffing, which is the idea of putting in as many keywords as possible, that worked like 20 years ago. That doesn't work anymore. So whoever was suggesting that, don't do that. But also, like your blog posts, just so our listeners know, and maybe whether you realize it or not, so you have very strong headers. That's key to writing a good blog post. You have short paragraphs and lots of white space. That's key to writing a good blog post. You have lots of links going different places on your website to keep people engaged. So like all of these things are really good examples of how to write a good blog post. So I would actually commend you for doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear.
So again, since I'm an editor as well, that's how I look at things. And so maybe you just did it because you're a good writer, but those are actually SEO best practices.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. I love your blog assessment that's on your website. That was really useful.
Yeah, you can.
Everybody should download that.
Well, hey, I appreciate the free ad. I will definitely take that. And yeah, take it, use it, spread the word. Maybe I'll have to link to that in the show notes. So let's just talk a little bit, because we've talked business a little bit. I kind of want to get to know you a little bit more. So when you're not working, and I know that as a business owner, that's kind of an iffy proposition, but when you're not working or thinking about work, what is it you like to do? What's your favorite thing to do?
Oh, my favorite thing to do is to spend time with my 10-year-old granddaughter. She's just the light of my life. And God sends us grandchildren at just the right time in life so that we can stay cheerful.
That's amazing. So I'm a parent. My kids are in their teens, so I don't have grandkids yet. But I've heard from almost every grandparent, including my own parents, that that grandkids are way better than kids. Is that
Oh, yeah.
true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's way better than even people explain to you. It's hard to put into words. It's just it's a new lease on life. It's like, wow, there's hope for the world. Look at this innocent young person, wide-eyed, who can help me see the world in an entirely different way. It's fabulous.
That's awesome.
And the great thing about grandparenting is that you don't have all the responsibility of parenting. You can just visit and then give them back.
That's right. Fill them up with sugar and hand them back to mom and dad. So do you get to see your grandchild a lot? Are they nearby?
Yeah, I actually 3 years ago I moved 2 blocks away from my son and his family, so we see each other all the time, and we're within walking distance. I don't even have to get in the car.
That's amazing. Perfect. And you live in Arizona, I think, so you probably have lots of nice weather to go out and do things.
Phoenix, yeah, we can't walk in the summertime because it's too hot.
Too hot.
They didn't tell me before I moved here that summer was 6 months long, but in the winter it's nice to walk.
Nice. See, I live in Seattle, so we have the opposite problem. It's, rainy and cold like 9 months of the year, but the summertime's amazing.
Yeah.
So you have been working in the publishing world for over 50 years, which is amazing. So in that period of time, you have accumulated a ton of wisdom. So what's one nugget that you could share with our listeners, whether it's your business or life, just that nugget of wisdom that you would love to impart to anyone listening?
Well, I'll quote Churchill: always do the right thing. It will gratify your friends and astound your enemies. That's my favorite quote of all time. And it really, if you think about it, it's the golden rule. It's another way to express the golden rule. Just do what's right. Put in the work. Don't try to cheat. Don't try to cut corners, because the results will be worth it.
That is great advice. And I did not know that Churchill quote. I knew some other quotes, all of them equally funny, but I didn't know that one. So that's a great quote. Yeah. So Michele, if people want to learn more about you and what you do, where can they find out?
They can find everything out about us at 1106design.com. And if they want to, they can plug in their email address and I will send them a PDF of my book, Publish Like the Pros. And we also do this, by the way, for other business owners who may not want to write a full-length book, but they want to tell their message to their customers. This book is 88 pages. You can read it in a very quick amount of time. And it has brought me more business than I can count, more so than anything else we've ever done. So if you want to see what it looks like, you can download it for free.
That's wonderful. Perfect. I would encourage everyone to go over to 1106design.com and download that ebook. It would be great. So, and if you enjoyed our discussion today, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. So again, Michele, thank you so much for being on. And with that, I want everyone to have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Content Creators Unite podcast.
Thank you, John.